mic was off. We're off to a great start.
Kraken Rod or something like that. Oh, okay. Apparently
I was gonna ride that
into a wall.
Number 5 is Tremors Shrieker Island.
I knew it. I knew it.
What's up, boy? Oh boy.
Cast this man up.
Very nice, very nice. And
Sergeant Rescue. Oh! Oh no!
What's your favorite starting Pokemon Gen 1? That's the question. And if it isn't Squirtle Squad, you're doing it wrong.
And it won't just be these specific decks or even this specific format. Maybe one time we'll do Two-Headed Giant or whatever, but we're starting with like other games.
I think it'll be less than 50 episodes before I break Max.
Is that a promise?
That's a guarantee.
The mark guaranteed. Breaking max in 50 episodes or less.
Alright, we got 2 of them. Look at this. Who needs guns when you have a Warthog?
Ah! What? Are you kidding me? How many freaking times do I have to kill this guy?
I love coming back to this exact route once you have your full team and you just see these little squirrels facing off against like literal gods and giants. It's like, whoops.
he said stop. No, I think I'll cut you in half.
No. This guy down. That's right. Merry Christmas, you filthy animal.
The Grey Dwarf shutdown. I can't handle that financially. Doesn't matter if it's a Grey Dwarf, because the tree will just fall on you. Why do I even do the video game thing?
Assemble!
Yeah. Ah, that was it. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo.
Down one.
Good to go. Good to know.
Oh shoot! Dang it!
Good to know.
Down two.
Not many.
Down three.
Hello and welcome to the Infinity Bros podcast, the only podcast that is perfectly balanced as all things should be. My name is Isaac Edlin. I am your host tonight, and I am joined by 2 fellow Infinity Bros. Number 1 in your hearts, and the first one I'm announcing is Zane Ellis.
Yes! Got it!
It's
Number
part
one.
of the bit.
Number one.
I gotta announce Zane first every time he's on the podcast now. Max probably won't hold to that bit. He doesn't get the bit. So,
Max is lame.
Zane, welcome to the pod. It's good to have you back, man.
Thanks. Good to be here. Spooky month, October.
Spooky.
It's the best.
Yeah.
It's my time of
Good
year.
times. Yes. Also, another person who enjoys this time of year is our good friend and Infinity Bro, Mark Jones.
I am also another person, so I'm glad to be here.
That is accurate. He is another person.
A person, exactly. And
It's
we are
Mark,
very
the
glad
other
to have
person,
him.
Jones, here in your ears.
Mark, the other guy.
The other guy.
The other guy, Jones.
From parts
Could
unknown.
Maybe you could have picked a more interesting name than Mark Jones, and then maybe you would be announced.
Yeah, man, I'm
first
sorry
in the
about that.
Infinity
When I
Podcast.
landed here, I only knew 2 things. That was Mark Jones,
Yep, there it is. Welcome to the Infinity Bros podcast. We are going to be talking a few different things, namely She-Hulk and Werewolf by Night. But we do want to mention that there's plenty of Patreon content on some horror and spooky movies and some other things as well. So if you're interested
And
in
the
some
rest.
other things, yes, which will not be named on the Infinity Bros podcast at this moment, but if you are interested in joining the Infinity Bros Patreon for $2 a month to get access to uncut episodes, make sure you check out the link in the show notes. You can also check out the Infinity Bros on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, YouTube. I feel like the list of stuff that we're on just keeps growing and growing these days. And yeah, and now you can check out our full video episodes on YouTube as well. So make sure you go check out our YouTube to see Zane's lovely face, because
Yes.
I mean, who wouldn't want to see that sitting in his dark Sith lair? So
It's true. It's true.
yeah,
I'm a hot commodity.
Hot commodity. We've got lots of big things going on at the Infinity Bros. You can check out theinfinitybros.com for Zane's bio. Definitely some big things going on there. But yeah, so we're going to be reviewing She-Hulk and Werewolf by Night tonight. So the first thing we're going to talk about, guys, we're going to dive right into it because we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. But we're going to be talking about She-Hulk, and for those new listeners, we have a very specific rating system on the Infinity Bros podcast we're going to tell you about right here. So, guys, I want to talk about She-Hulk first because I think we're gonna talk about that a little bit less because we're very excited about Werewolf by Night that just dropped last week. So, She-Hulk, I want to get your guys, before we dive full into spoilers, I want to get just a quick 60-second review of episode 8 of She-Hulk. Zane, go ahead.
Yeah, like episode 8 just kind of keeps going where the series has been going. It just keeps with the kind of the situational, the sitcom feeling of like, hey, we're just gonna keep ratcheting this up. We're gonna keep, the same feel that we've had for all 8 episodes, and we're gonna bring in a well-loved character, and it just
Frogman.
yes, Frogman. And yeah, it's
Well
just
loved
like
indeed, yes.
just
Well loved.
gonna keep up the zany antics that this show has presented us, and I'm all for it.
You pulled out the zany adjective. Wow, that's yeah. I mean, I wouldn't expect anything else from Zane.
I imagine
but
when Zane says and would spell zany, he would spell it with his name and then put another Y at the end.
With a Y at the end, yeah.
Do you think when he's like making his Tinder profile, he puts zany as one of the adjectives that describes him?
I don't know why he wouldn't. That's just like a shoehorn in way to a relationship.
That's just
There you
that's just easy money. That's easy pickings
money
right there.
All right, Mark, what did you think of episode 8 of She-Hulk?
I think this one might be one of the top episodes I've watched. Probably give it a good 5.75 out of 6 for this episode. I liked the action that we actually finally got. It feels like she was finally in her super suit. Frogman, or a version of it, appears. What else do we get? The one and only finally comes. That's what she said. And literally and figuratively, the two-way term for specifically this episode. And that was totally unintentional. Sorry for the pun. And
Max will probably not think so, but
Max might laugh. That's what's funny about that when he edits this. Or no one will hear this and only hear this part to make me look like a fool, because Max is good at that.
True.
Overall, yeah, it's, like Zane said, it's like the situational comedy that is, I feel like it's working. I see a lot of hate online where like, oh, Rotten Tomatoes gives this like an 87%. It's like, I don't know who's watching this and like not having a good time. Except for maybe my wife, but we'll dive.
Yeah.
She had some good opinions I want to bring up. I feel like from the female perspective that I think is missed by some of us, but yeah.
Yes, I think you've brought some of her insight on previous episodes that I think is as well appreciated and shared by a lot of people watching the show. So, but I agree with both of you guys. I think honestly, this is the best episode of the series so far to me. I absolutely love this episode. I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 6. It was just fantastic, super fun to watch. You know, like you guys said, the guest appearances, fantastic. We'll dive a little bit more into it with the spoilers, but honestly, I love this episode absolutely, and I think there's been was super pumped about the show coming into it. I started to fall off a little bit because of just like the sitcom-y nature, and it just felt like things weren't really wrapping together. But this episode brought me fully back in. Like, I absolutely love this episode. I think it's the best one of She-Hulk so far, and I'm really excited for the finale next week. So, all right, guys, this is your spoiler warning. We're going to be diving full into spoilers for She-Hulk, episode 8 and the series. And I might as well just say we're going to be spoiling Werewolf by Night now as well. So if you haven't watched that, go ahead and listen to the rest of the She-Hulk review and then skip the rest of the Werewolf by Night review that we're going to be giving later. So, all right, guys, spoilers. I mean, Daredevil came back. Charlie Cox, we finally got him back as Daredevil. What did you guys think of this portrayal of Daredevil in this series? Mark, go ahead.
So I just want to be clear. This Daredevil is not the Daredevil from the Netflix series, right? Or is that still up in the air? Like, have we had any... Has Daddy Feige told us this is not Netflix
So
Daredevil?
It's been kind of ambivalent, and it's been, like, confirmed by online sources that this Trust me, bro, guys, that this is canon to the MCU, or the Netflix shows are canon to the MCU. Kevin Feige says that it's the same Daredevil. That's about how far as he'll go.
Okay.
He doesn't straight up say those shows are canon to the MCU. So at this point, it's still up for debate, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I personally think they probably are canon, but it's like hard to give solid proof of that right now.
Because that's my big thing with Daredevil being back. Is like, I want all the stuff that I watched, all the time I gave to Daredevil for the Netflix series, I want that to be still, still in the same timeline, or like that's the guy. Like, his same backstory as the guy who showed up in She-Hulk. That's what I kind of want. But overall, yes, I'm glad he's back. I love that, it was going to be the yellow and red suit, because that's one of my favorite suits that he wears.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems, I don't know how to put it. Like, yeah, I was just, I was super pumped. I was, even my beautiful wife Kelly were watching. She's like, "Oh, he's back," and I was like, "Yeah, you mean." Finally, they told us
finally, exactly.
He's going to be in 5 episodes, and literally,
I put out a TikTok literally like 5 episodes ago, because on IMDb at the time it said that he was appearing in 6 episodes. Like, they totally pulled the wool over my eyes. I thought he was going to be appearing way earlier in the series and become like a recurring role.
To She-Hulk,
maybe. just surprise drop 5 episodes or 6 episodes of She-Hulk after the fact. Oh my gosh, that would be wild.
But I really okay, back to Daredevil and Matt Murdock. I really loved how he shows up late, like like that's so I feel like so meta, like yeah, I wasn't here right away, guys, but now I'm here, so like let's get the show on the road type of situation. That's how I felt it. It felt like
right.
Like the whole like, oh, the driver got lost. I think maybe the driver was Kevin Feige, obviously.
Yeah, right.
Like that, and like I love the connection they went right into it with him and She-Hulk and Jen Walters. Just like the relationship I think we all need and want right now, because we're kind of missing that. Like, that's literally everyone in the last handful of characters like don't have like a loved one or a partner anymore, because like they died.
Right.
They broke up. They're no longer like in the universe.
Yeah. Yep.
So, it's great stuff. I mean, I wish, just going right at the end, I wish they wouldn't have hooked up. I really didn't. I didn't like that. Like, I kind of wish they kind of fostered that relationship more. Like, they actually they went like, oh, we had a spark. And,
right.
That's just and then now Matt Murdock has to go to confession. Confess his sins for having premarital sex with Jennifer Walters. So he'll be absolved, but not Jennifer Walters, I'm assuming, because she doesn't have that ability.
to absolve sins. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not what I've heard is on her power set. So
Yeah, so
I
I do love that they set up a potential villain for She-Hulk though, with the Frogman, and knowing that he has money in his background. So
yeah,
I feel
right.
like he's gonna show back up with a
Mhm.
way better techie suit,
Yeah,
and might pose an issue for She-Hulk down the road. So I love that aspect, that Frogman could come back. So,
yeah, right.
and we were teased with a freaking hallway fight that just got smashed. Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually like. I thought that was kind of hilarious how they did that, just because this is her show. So the way that she just like disrupted that whole scene was perfect in my opinion. Zane, what did you think of Daredevil coming back and She-Hulk?
Yeah, it was good to see that character. Like, I mean, obviously we had Matt Murdock kind of like within No Way Home, and like we've had those instances, but it was nice to actually see him as Daredevil and actually kind of get that back in, to have him come and do an episode. And it's like, not only did we get an episode of Daredevil and fighting, but you also had Matt Murdock and lawyering going on, which was fun, even though it was totally based on like, oh yeah, here's this idiot client who's tried to sue someone over something petty and
Yeah.
dumb, and you're just like, oh, okay. But no, it was fun to see. Or it's something that we've been teased for as long as we have.
Right.
Yeah, I wish it would have done a little more of like fostering that relationship between Jen and Matt a little bit more than just like going right into it. Like that was kind of a weird, or even like the post afterwards, him doing the walk of shame, holding his boots. Like it was just kind of like I get it, but you're like I that's not really what I want to see out of Daredevil. Like he's supposed to be like wearing the suit at night and stuff, not just out in the middle of the day doing the walk of shame in it. Like go back to dressing like a lawyer.
And assuming people might see him and recognize him, be like, why is he in LA?
Which also could be part of it too, of why, because like he's in LA, going the
Sure.
whole West Coast type thing of, and yeah, that's the suit is different because it's the yellow and red, so maybe that's what part of it is. It's just like, hey, I'm gonna be be a little more cavalier because I'm not in Hell's Kitchen right now.
Sure.
Yeah, that's true. That could be a part of it. So personally, I loved pretty much everything about him in this episode, except for what you guys already mentioned is the hooking up with She-Hulk. I think again, I don't have a problem with
Hooked up
Matt
with
Murdock.
Jen Walters.
Jen Walters. Well, yeah, Jen Walters. It just, man, I don't have a problem with him hooking up with people because he did that in the Netflix series as well. But like,
Did he do that? I like because
he did it with. Didn't he do it with Elektra? And he did it with. I thought he did it with. He didn't do it with Karen Page at any point, did he? No,
I thought it was just Elektra, and at that point, like they had a relationship.
Right,
so
they
like,
had like an
yeah,
actual
yeah.
relationship.
See, that's the thing. Like, that's where I agree with you guys.
That's where it's like,
I think it should have been like him, building that relationship first, because that's what Daredevil is. Like he doesn't really take things like lightly, like he takes things seriously. On the other hand, he is basically a man whore in the comics. So like that aspect of it,
good
okay, like I'll give him that. Like that's fine. But yeah, I think it would have been nice if they had put a little bit more. And it's tough because these episodes are so quick. They're like 20 minutes long. So like, how do you build that relationship? The easiest answer would be don't do it in one episode. Like, stretch it over 2-3 plus episodes. But yeah, that was the only aspect of it that I was like, not really a fan of that. Absolutely loved him walking in to the courtroom as Matt Murdock and just obliterating She-Hulk and her client. That was fantastic. And this is my main gripe with this whole series, is that we got kind of advertised a Ally McBeal like lawyering show, and the lawyering has been like a sprinkle of what we're going on. I think it's focusing more, and I understand why they're doing this, but they're focusing more on Jennifer Walters and her internal struggle with being She-Hulk. And that makes sense. Like, this is the She-Hulk show. But I don't know. I expected a little bit more of the lawyering aspect of it. So seeing Matt Murdock and her face off, that was fantastic. I want more of that for sure.
So
what are you
one
going to say,
thing
Mark?
that Kelly brought up while watching this, and I had also some shared opinions on that, where it's like Jen Walters, we kind of got in the series as like a good lawyer, but I think when she's been She-Hulk, she's not the best of lawyers, because that was a big question. It's like, why didn't she? Because the reason why they're in the courtroom is because Frogman, has a rich father who, is part of this, uses them as attorneys.
Yeah.
Like, uses jet fuel is what we find out. And like, why didn't she go? You would think she would have done her research and asked these questions to figure this out before going to Jacobson.
Yeah.
And instead of having, like, this is what frustrates me in a lot of shows I've been watching. No one can have a freaking civilized conversation. It's just like everyone goes in hot and heavy, and just I don't know. It's just something about, like, literally him and the costume guy. She and him could have figured that out, and be like, oh,
Right.
here's the issue. Yeah, we can just throw this case out. Didn't happen. Which then because then Kelly was saying how she's actually the worst character as like a person, because she's so like when she kind of said this stuff, it's like it makes sense. Like, it's either she grew up so smart that she didn't develop like a good personality and like how to like function socially, because she's also kind of awkward, but then also she's kind of like standoffish as a person, but very self-absorbed at the same time, which then doesn't foster well with She-Hulk. And then my theory has been is her being as She-Hulk as the attorney is like whatever like affects Bruce in the Hulk being two separate like identities.
Yeah.
Is that affecting her long term being in the She-Hulk form? Because that kind of hinted really heavy at the end of this episode.
Right, at the end of the episode, exactly.
Like
she definitely seemed to kind of disassociate the Jen Walters identity from the She-Hulk identity towards the end of that episode a little bit. So definitely, you might be onto something there, Mark, for sure.
Like, which was something I thought of that too. I think it's going to tie back to that first episode, because like you kind of went through it. I remember a lot of people online talked about it, but just how Bruce was so much of just like, hey, it's important to control this stuff once you become a superhero. Like, you're a Hulk now. Like it's important. And then, you got the whole thing, and then she run off, does her own thing. I think it's going to tie back to this of showing that her loss of control might be different than how Bruce's was, but like it's ultimately going to play that back around of being like, hey, this is why you need to remain in control, because one instance of messing up and you're viewed as a monster. And we just had that at the end of that episode of her one mess up, and now everyone's reaction to it.
But it was them showing a sex tape of hers. That's what we're assuming that they were going to show. And they're dudes in the back with masks on who are clearly like part of that group, that online group. And she has one of them, and they just let that dude run away. At the end, when she like busts out, like she grabs one of them, and she has all. This is going back into the weeds. I feel I would not be surprised, if either the firm she's a part of is a part of this, or whoever put on this gala is a part of this. Because it seems too weird that all this setup was there and no one could just turn off all the monitors right away. And clearly they were working the monitors. So like that's where it's like, I think we're going to find in this last episode a lot more, a lot more people are involved than I think what we initially thought.
All right. So, I mean, that brings us to, we already talked about the end of the episode here. Hulk King is the person behind all of this. Who is the Hulk King? And is it a character that we've seen already? Is it a totally new character? And what the heck is going to happen in the finale of She-Hulk, Zane?
I don't even know.
Like what? There's not been a whole lot of like clues as to who this person is.
The only thing that would make sense, because of the fact that, especially with everything with the blackmail and getting all this information, all this stuff, the only thing that would make sense is if it's the leader. Because the leader just becomes obsessed with the Hulk. He can't get Bruce, so what would be the next best thing to go after? She-Hulk. And so, like, the leader would be smart enough to, send the low-budget wrecking crew to send all these different things, and then, slowly figure out of like, hey, that's not going to work. All right, how do you go after someone who's, has invulnerable skin? Well, you got to get them when they're in their human form. And how do you attack this person? well, you don't physically attack them, you attack them, mentally or their character. Or so part of me feels like Hulk King you could get appearance of the leader here.
Interesting. Mark, what do you think about Hulk King?
I mean, Zane kind of just took the words out of my mouth with the leader. So I'm going to go in a different route, just to be saucy. And I'm going to say...
Saucy.
I almost want to say Emil Blonsky might be involved somehow.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because
you think this whole peace and love thing that he's doing is a farce?
I think it's all a mirage. I think it's all a farce. And I hope I'm wrong. Because eventually he's got to get into Thunderbolts. You'd think if he's a part of that or the enemy of Thunderbolts.
True.
But man, the leader is such a good that's introduced the leader back, so then he becomes a villain for New World Order, which would be perfect for this online group of faux AQAnon people. So that's what it kind of seems like. But man, do we get someone we've seen before, or do we get a brand new villain, or is it someone we've seen that becomes a villain? So that's very hitting all the bases to make sure I.
Yeah, I love that. Two very different but very intriguing theories we've got here in the Infinity
It's Mephisto.
Obviously it's Mephisto. Why? What am I thinking?
Obviously.
Do you think Daredevil shows back up in this episode? Because we're assuming he made a flight back to New York.
Right.
The next day.
I think it's possible just because she's also going to be in legal trouble with destroying all this stuff. So maybe he comes back to represent her in court and, all that kind of stuff. I don't know. Who knows?
Had to come back to this because I don't remember if it was this last episode or the episode before. I think it was this last one where they talked. Yeah, it was this last one where they said the Accords.
Yes.
Or dropped. What a subtle what happened for them to just drop all that.
Yep. I absolutely love that they just subtly dropped that in and just were like, all right, there it is.
Yep. The Accords are no more. It's anymore. What happened? Yeah. What happened where they're like, yeah, superheroes can claim their, their anonymity. And
it was obviously a terrible idea, as evidenced by every, Civil War piece of material that's ever come out from Marvel. So.
Yeah.
Team Cap.
Do you think Hulk shows back up? That's the other question.
That is a good question. I don't think so. I think he's gone. He's in space now. I don't think we'll even be able to contact him. He's gearing up for World War Hulk in 2026. So
right.
Do we get? I just want to say, do we get an Avenger? But there's not really a lot. But I would say, do we get another known?
The Avengers, yeah, they're kind of in shambles right now.
They're
we gotta have a regrouping. Disassembled, exactly.
Okay, but do you think we get another character we've seen back? Does White Vision show up? What are the chances of
White Vision show up? I hope so, because I would be very interested to see where that would be going. Oh my gosh. I think honestly the most likely is Daredevil coming back to be a part of this episode. Who else could even be a part of this without it being totally shoehorned in?
Oh, well,
I don't know.
One that comes to my mind because it's Oakland, so that's close enough. It'd be Riri Williams, right? But I don't know how you shoot her. I don't know how you push her into this.
Yeah, right.
But she might have a prototype suit to fight if she is hulking.
Right.
So
yeah, that's what's so interesting about this episode is that I mean, I mentioned that we don't really know much about the Hulk King. Usually how these Marvel shows go is it comes back to a person that they've known in their past. It's a person.
Carter.
Yeah.
Maybe it's Sharon Carter. Maybe she's
it comes back to a person that's been in the series running the whole time with them. There doesn't really seem to be a person in the series that it really could be. So unless they pull something really crazy out and it's Nikki or something like that, but I don't know. I don't know who it could be. Honestly,
hold on. So you guys, the Infinity Bros universe. Nikki's her friend who's
diving into the weeds.
Right, that's who Nikki is, if I'm remembering right. Her friend. Yeah. There's a lot I'm gonna get really real deep into the weeds.
Here we go.
But just some of the shots they had with her and the way her Julie was wearing. Anyways, she wore a lot of black. There were sometimes her necklace, that's a star, was upside down, looked like a pentagram.
Yep.
Not saying Mephisto, but I'm saying she could be a bad person.
And there has been multiple times in the season where she has looked at the camera as in fourth person, but
Yep,
she
and
hasn't spoken to the camera. And I think we even had that in WandaVision with Agatha, right? She looked at the camera a few times as well.
She knew what was going. Yeah, when
Right.
when Agatha was doing it all.
So there's that element of, maybe she knows something else is going on, or maybe it's totally an optical illusion,
maybe it's Pug.
I was gonna say, if it's Pug, I'm
Maybe
gonna
it's
riot.
Pug.
I'm gonna riot if it's
God.
Pug.
He didn't
No,
get those
Pug-
Iron Man 3s.
Pug is a great man. Don't you dare say that about Pug.
He was stuck with Avengers t-shirts.
Oh my gosh. Well, guys, let us know who you think Hulk King is. You can hook up the Infinity Bros universe on Discord to chat weekly about all of this stuff, or just hit us up on social media. Tell us who you think Hulk King is, and get geared up for the finale of She-Hulk next week. All right, guys, it is time to dive into Werewolf by Night. Man, this was a trip. Okay,
So much fun.
I'm gonna read a short synopsis here. On a dark and somber night, a secret cabal of monster hunters emerge from the shadows and gather at the foreboding Bloodstone Temple following the death of their leader. In a strange and macabre memorial to the leader's life, the attendees are thrust into a mysterious and deadly competition for a powerful relic, a hunt that will ultimately bring them face to face with a dangerous monster. So this is based on the Werewolf by Night comic by Marvel Comics, which Moon Knight made his first appearance in, actually. So Jarrett's got a little bit of investment in this, and they're calling it a Marvel Studios special presentation. Dropped on Disney Plus on yesterday, October 7th, and it's 54 minutes long. It says on here, dropped to great reviews, 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, guys, with an audience score of 94% so far. Like, pretty much loved across the board. Like, if you compare that to any Marvel project, I mean, it's up there. It's probably top 10, honestly, in scoring in the MCU, which is pretty impressive. So, yeah, a lot of really awesome things going on about this series. We already put a spoiler warning out there, so if you haven't watched this, make sure you go do that and then come back and listen to our review. Guys, let's just go ahead and say your rating and just a quick thoughts. Zane will go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, so just quick rating on this, just 6 out of 6. Like, I didn't really know what to expect coming into this, but like the way they captured the homage and the way this made like an old school monster movie was so well done. But not only does it capture all those feelings of these old monster movies, but it was also like a modern feeling as well. And so like they kind of did a really good job of blending like both worlds, both feelings. And like it was so cool that they gave it this one shot, this special. Like I think this is a fantastic way to introduce like some of these offbeat characters, or to even kind of tell some of these offbeat stories that just like you don't need a full-length movie and you don't need a full-length show on it, but like run a few of these specials that around Halloween or during certain events, holidays, or whatever. Like I think this is a great way of introducing some of these characters, and like as you can tell too, like this story was very well done. It was super fun to watch.
Yeah, for a 54-minute special, like it was incredible how great the story was and how they tied everything up. I thought it was fantastic. Mark, what were your thoughts on this special presentation?
I could piggyback on all what Zane said. I would also give it a 6 out of 6. I went into this only knowing one character from the trailer, and that was not Swamp Thing, Man Thing.
Man Thing.
Which, if you know your comic books, Man Thing came out 2 months before Swamp Thing did in the comics, because it's DC Marvel have basically the same character. But in this case, Marvel had it first, so there it is.
There you go.
but yeah, I knew basically nothing. I knew about Werewolf by Night, but I'm not like, heavy into that. I knew the blood thing, I've heard the Bloodstone stuff, but like knew nothing about that. But yeah, it's like cinematically, like, yeah, this is great. You got dropped into this world, it's with MCU, I guess, but dropped into this scenario, and got a pretty good introduction, kind of like catching up on what's going on, what this thing that they're fighting for, and that monsters are involved. And I wish I didn't see the trailer, so I didn't know who the werewolf was going to be. But yeah, it's yeah, it like hit all the tropes for horror and scary stuff, and I wouldn't say it's overtly scary, but if you saw the trailer, you might think it might be. But yeah, I had a good time, and I don't think who's ever negatively talking about this like just doesn't get film in general. So,
and honestly, I have heard very, very little negative feedback on this special at all. Like, and I'm pretty active on Twitter, especially, which there are plenty of negative opinions to go around most of the time. But I've only seen a few tweets that people weren't a fan of this production. So, but I want to just reiterate the same thing as you guys have. I thought this was fantastic. 6 out of 6 from me. Infinity snaps for Werewolf by Night on the
haven't had one of those in a bit.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. Max has been totally ruining our vibe the last year.
That's what wanted
Is he given anything a 6 out of 6 on the podcast for when was the last thing I think he did? I don't even remember.
I think he's been giving some of these She-Hulk episodes 6 out of 6, but
which is interesting.
He's loving it.
He really is loving She-Hulk, which is great for him. That's awesome. But yeah, and as a non-horror fan, I mean, I watched the trailer and I thought it looked fantastic. And I'm, again, not much of a horror guy. Like, I enjoy playing horror games, and I enjoy the occasional slasher, film or thriller movie. But I would not consider myself a fan of the horror genre. But this was fantastic, amazing production. Like, just the way they handled everything in this presentation was incredible to me, and I want to see more of these as opposed to the Disney Plus shows that they've been putting out. Right. Honestly, if they can put this much into this special production, I'd rather have them spend all of the money that they were going to spend on a Disney Plus show on one of these. If it can be this well produced every single time, because I feel like we haven't been getting that level of production in these Disney Plus shows. So I thought it was amazing. Loved, I was because I'm not a horror guy, I was thinking of giving it a little bit lower of a rating, but the more I think about it, there's nothing that I can really say that's bad about this. Everything about it was incredible. So I'm even though it's not my jam necessarily, I can't knock it. It's fantastic. So I would absolutely love to see
especially anything that gives us a live action Man-Thing, where Man-Thing actually looks fantastic.
Yeah, he looked great.
I was just wondering, and even just ends up stealing the show. At the end when he grabs the chick and just roasts her, and then Elsa's just staring at him, and he just shrugs. Yeah. Just what? You're just that's brilliant.
Werewolf by Night was a perfect. Yeah.
Oh right. He's just that absolute perfect ridiculous character. Because because I was reading some of his backstory too. Just the original part of it was they were creating a serum to try to counter or try to create the Captain America serum, but his basically was a serum that countered all chemical components, but then he crashed his car into a swamp, which is supposedly a mystic part of the swamp, and then you come to find out that's where the nexus of all realities is, and you're just it just becomes this character that you're just hey, we're just gonna make this super weird, super bonkers, and we're gonna make Man-Thing the guardian of it all. And you're just all right, and then here he is in Werewolf by Night.
But he got captured to be killed, so
yeah, you're just
also wild.
Okay, all right, I guess.
Yeah,
but it is weird that they kind of went the monster route on him, because technically he's not a monster. That's why it's weird that the Bloodstone affected him, whereas Jack Russell actually becomes a monster, becomes a werewolf. Whereas Man Thing got like mutated into that. Whereas he's not like an actual cryptid, but
Right.
I guess I don't know the properties of how the Bloodstone's going to work in the MCU.
Right. That's what I was gonna say.
You're really
I would
going
have
to
to do
question
more
the Bloodstone
research.
properties.
I would have to do more research on the Bloodstone because I'm probably in the same boat as you, Mark. Like I've heard of Werewolf by Night, I've heard of Man Thing, and I've heard of Elsa Bloodstone, but like I know pretty much nothing other than their names of all of these characters. So like I don't know anything about the Bloodstone. I don't really know how it works, but I think that made this even better for me because I'm not like sitting there questioning, oh man, like, does that really how that works in the comics?
So,
Blah, 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 all that stuff. But
another thing that came from this, thinking about monsters, though, another thing I feel like came from this is like all those hunters had confirmed kills. And this is drawing back to not the last episode she hooked, but the one before with like the Matador and that guy. You know what I'm talking about? How many creatures are on Earth that there's at least 200 plus to kill?
Right.
Yeah.
So
true.
Which I think that's something, the other articles I've read, that's what some people are saying, to kind of give a fresh perspective of the MCU. Go through this whole monster side of Marvel that they've never explored before. Like, yeah, you have your main stuff of everything of, you know, from Secret Invasion and all these main storylines, but give us more of these monsters that are hiding in in plain sight. Because then you can start giving us, you know, these type of Midnight Suns type characters, your Elsa Bloodstones,
Right.
bring in, you know, you're introducing Blade, you bring in Ghost Rider, like a lot of these that are kind of these monster hunter type characters, because like this works perfectly for these one-shot type things. Like, yeah, give us these monsters that are just hiding, you know, in plain sight in different things, and like there's so much you can do with that.
Yeah, definitely. So we had I'm just going to list off a few of the cast members, but Gail Garcia Bernal was Jack Russell, which Jarrett pointed out last week. Peak Marvel, a werewolf named Jack Russell, like just peak 70s Marvel. Wonderful. Laura Donnelly as Elsa Bloodstone. With the kind of the main ones. Harriet Sansom Harris as Verusa. And Carrie Jones played Ted or Man Thing. Rick Wasserman as the narrator. Those are kind of mostly the main ones, but man, like fantastic cast. Like just the gentleman Gail Garcia Bernal who played Jack Russell. I absolutely loved him. I thought he was fantastic.
Oh, he was very charming.
Yeah, and Laura Donnelly as Elsa Bloodstone, like stole the show. Like amazing casting in these characters. So I thought those guys did a fantastic job. Sorry, go for it.
I would say, think about horror movies. He was in the M. Night Shyamalan movie Old just recently. So.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
Just like last year, I think it came out.
So he's So he's got a few under his belt there. That's pretty cool. My favorite part of this whole production was it being in black and white, and like they perfectly. Oh man, like I'm not even a horror fan, but like this is exactly how I would imagine a horror movie being from, you know, whatever, 1930 or 40 or something like that. Like this is exactly how it is, but it still had like the modern dialogue and modern blend of humor, and just like everything about that was just like, this is fantastic already. Like if you don't like the whole horror genre or like even the story of this show, you have to at least appreciate the production level that went into this presentation. Like it blew me away. And everything's black and white. The Bloodstone is red. Like it sticks out.
That was cool how they shot that.
Really cool aspect of that. And then at the very end, like, you know, it like kind of comes into color. And
yeah, like when Elsa basically possesses the Bloodstone.
Yeah.
And then basically everything turns to color. Like that was such a cool touch. Yeah.
Yeah. Super awesome. That's been my favorite. And I want to point out too. So this was directed by Michael Giacchino, who is a fantastic composer. I think for me specifically, when I found out he was directing this, I was like, why? Like, what? I didn't know anything if he had like directing experience. So I like looked it up. He had directed like a couple short like films and stuff like that. So it was like, what? Why did? And number one, like he's got connection. He composed the Spider-Man trilogy, the MCU Spider-Man trilogy. So he's got like connections there. But I was like, how does this guy get into this role to being the director of Werewolf by Night? So
like, why
that
not
was
like someone
wild
with
to
the direct, especially for it being a Marvel show that they want like probably done pretty well.
me.
Like you would think like maybe for horror they go out and get a horror director,
Yeah.
like a Guillermo del Toro, like someone like that to
Mhm.
be like, hey, we need a short. Do what you want to do. He might have made it a little too scary for the people, but you know, it would have been fun.
Yeah,
But I don't know.
that would have been a
For-
wild MCU production.
But like end of the, because I thought the same thing. Is like this dude really doesn't have any directorial
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
But
And
what
he-
I don't know if he had
what it
good,
comes down
like,
to is that he had to be the guy that made the pitch for this, right? Like,
yeah, right.
he must have made the pitch to Marvel, and they're like, "Wow, this is a fantastic idea.
This is
Like,
the movie
we
we
might
all
have to
made."
run with it."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the only way I can think
Or-
of how he became the director of this project.
Or he was partners with the screenwriter for this too. So like, you know, like, hey,
Maybe,
we,
yeah.
we like they came in together as the idea, like, hey, this is what we want to do. So, because I'm sure you
Yeah.
know Marvel probably has an idea what they want to do with stuff like this, but I'm sure they still hear pitches for all these characters, and then decide what to bring in, who to bring in. So, at this point,
Right.
I would imagine.
Yeah, definitely. Zane, what did you think of the blend of so first of all, back up a little bit. Marvel has come under fire in the past couple of years, probably, for their level of CGI in their movies and their shows, even down to like how they are treating their production team. There's been a lot of stuff leaking. Some people coming out and saying that like they're not getting paid enough, they're not getting treated well, blah blah blah, all this stuff. What did you think of the blend of practical and CGI effects in this production?
I thought it was done really well. Like I think there it needs to be more of that. I mean, obviously you got someone like Man Thing, like that's gonna be a little more CGI than practical, but like there are shots you can have more practical effect. But I wonder how much it being in black and white affected that at all. Whereas, like I know,
Right.
especially in regards to what you're doing with Werewolf by Night, being in black and white, like I think you can kind of it blends in some of the actual practical effects a bit. But like with a movie like this, when you're trying to capture that old school horror feel, like you have to use practical effects. Like if that would have been CGI, like or all CGI, it wouldn't. I don't think it'd be as good as it was.
Right.
That's just one of those characters and how they're presenting it and how it was shot. That like you have to have those practical effects. And I personally, I wish that's something Marvel would go back more to, of having more practical effects. Like I think that sells more of a story.
Yeah.
But
well, and we're seeing it more now in these shows like House of the Dragon and Rings of Power. Like they're using a lot of practical effects that make their sets and costumes look incredible. And nobody is watching those shows and being like, "Oh, the CGI sucks. Like
right.
this is terrible." And obviously they have to use CGI because there's dragons. Like they have
Right.
to use CGI. But like
Well,
nobody's
those
watching
dragons
those shows and being
aren't
like,
real.
Zane, I hate to
Are
break
you
it to
telling
you.
me?
I hate to break it
wasn't
to you,
real?
but yes, I'm sorry to tell you, Mark, but Man Thing was in fact CGI. Actually, in that last shot, where Jack Russell is sitting by Man Thing, that had to be a practical suit of Man Thing, because that looked
really
incredible. And they like do the close up on his face, and like it looks like it's a real suit. It looks real.
And especially
So-
for something that doesn't have like a moving mouth, really.
Yeah, right.
Like that's where you really could use a practical suit for that for the most part.
Right. And I'm assuming they used CGI for most of his moving shots because that just makes more sense. But like, I mean, that suit looked. I thought that suit looked. I would have to look up more, like as that scene, and make sure that it is in fact like a practical suit. But it sure looked like it to me. But yeah, I thought the blend of practical and CGI was fantastic in this. And they use like this, and again, like I feel like almost bad. I'm like going back to all this stuff, not being a huge horror guy, but like they use this great horror trope with Jack Russell or Werewolf by Night of like they didn't show a lot of him at all. It was more so like they use kind of the suspense, the intense scenes, the shadows, and they only showed a couple shots of his face in the whole entire presentation, and mostly used just like outline silhouettes, like that kind of stuff, which I mean, that's such a classic, awesome horror trope. Like, back in the day when they like just didn't have the practical
CGI or like the money
they didn't have CGI. They didn't.
Show a
they
transformation.
Literally could not like make the stuff that they needed to make for these horror movies. So they just like they had to use their creativity and imagination to show, like portray these monsters and these like things that were happening in the movie. So I thought it was awesome.
Trust,
they went back
trust
to that.
us, bro. He's changing into our world.
Just trust us. Yeah, but man,
we'll see him and he'll be full werewolf. Just don't worry, right?
Just don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. But then we actually did see a few shots of him, and it was full practical, like Teen Wolf like face. I thought that just fit the awesome campy vibe of it.
They went that route for like a human werewolf face versus like him turning into an
actual wolf
that stands on his legs. Like I agree. That's what people might gripe with. It's like, oh, it's too campy looking. But it's like that was kind of the point of this whole
It's like that.
The point.
It's that old school, the Wolfman. Like that was the whole point of it.
Like, Werewolf in London type of looking werewolf. So yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Totally agreed, man. I thought this was I think I mentioned this in the chat too. I think this was probably my favorite project since Shang-Chi, honestly.
Yeah, you said that.
Like I've enjoyed most of what Marvel has put out in Phase 4, but I think this was something special, and not just because it's a special presentation. It's
when
because
you said that, I thought about
special.
This. Do you think I felt like there was more, they did better action in this 50 minutes than they've done in so many different properties.
I agree. Yeah.
In the last year. Like, I just feel like this was so well executed with both them entering into the maze labyrinth, the hunt man, the monster, and then the final, fight scene, like in the entryway, the chasm, or whatever they call it.
I don't know. I think maybe Zane, you're onto something with like black and white. Like they had to probably think about that and film that differently with them knowing that it was going to be in black and white.
Oh, you totally film it differently in black and white.
Right, exactly. So like, I gotta believe that like they I mean, obviously took that in consideration when they're doing the fight choreography and such as well. But like, I mean, I think you're totally onto something there, because the last great, incredible action that we've had in the MCU is definitely Shang-Chi. Like that, we had an incredible action and like kung fu in Shang-Chi, and I would even go back to Falcon and Winter Soldier, where that's the more like typical MCU action, but like that had great action as well. I would even say, because it's funny that I was talking about this with my wife Kelly, is I would also throw Hawkeye. Even though Hawkeye's lower on my list, I feel like that had some good action scenes closer to the end. But you're right. It did have some good stuff.
But like, there was more action in this 50 minutes, top tier action, than there was in all of Miss Marvel. And I will fight anyone about that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I agree on that. You might have to fight Marvel or Marvel. You might have to fight. Let's see. Jarrett was really high on Miss Marvel, and I believe Scott loved Miss Marvel as well. So those are the guys you got to fight.
I will fight both of them if I have to.
Bring it on.
I wonder part of that
is something.
It's just simply because of the fact that this was 55 minutes, so it's like it had more time than a just regular Disney Plus show episode. But it, obviously it's shorter than an actual movie, but like.
Mm-hmm.
Like it actually kind of had time to develop some of that stuff.
Do you think Mahershala Ali sees this?
Even though the premise of it going into it.
What were you gonna say?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I just think this was like going into it, like they kind of knew, like, hey, you already had this self-contained story, so it was like you didn't have to go into as much exposition and background into making this. You get right into,
True.
all right, here's everyone
Right.
showing up. Here's a hunt.
Well,
Let's go. You know.
Right, and
No
yeah, and it
dicking
was a
around, we're
relatively
fighting.
simple concept. There, like,
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Like right to the
Yeah.
business.
right. I mean, they literally brought everybody in, explained exactly what was going to happen, and they're just like, go, just
Yeah.
all right. There we go.
So is that maybe something that a lot of the other Disney shows have been struggling with, of too much backstory, and just maybe needs a little bit more of just like,
Yeah,
all right, just
or
go with it.
simplification of it, because I think like what we've seen with these Disney Plus shows specifically is that they're trying to cram a lot of story building and background into 6 relatively short episodes of TV.
Do you think they're trying to do that because
simplification would
years?
probably benefit them big time. Yeah, and that's part of it. And I'm sure, a big part of all of that, like COVID and, all the halting of production and all, I'm sure it played a big part in all of those Disney Plus shows. But it just, yeah, I think it definitely hurt those shows. Like they're trying to cram so much into the amount of time they had. And I think there is a little bit of a difference, because these Disney Plus characters they're going to be main players in the MCU down the road. And that might not be the case with the characters in this special presentation. Maybe we get Elsa Bloodstone in like Midnight Suns way down the road, or even maybe Jack Russell is involved in that too. But like, I mean, these are relatively minor characters that are in the scope of the MCU. Plus, this is so different from what we're used to in the MCU. And I mean, you mentioned it, Mark, for what was our most recent? Is She-Hulk? Is I think it's, you were talking about She-Hulk on a recent episode, but like it's a breath of fresh air in the MCU. Like this is something new that they did very, very well, and I think, I mean, Marvel nailed it on this one. So looking forward here, I did mention Elsa Bloodstone potentially could be, in like a Midnight Suns type of deal when we eventually get that movie. Zane, do you think any of these characters are going to be seen in the mainline MCU continuity, or are these kind of niche? Is this a niche special presentation that we're not going to see again?
Well, I mean, obviously they're very niche characters, just because it's coming from this horror, this dark side of Marvel. Not that it's necessarily straight up, super terrifying horror, but it's from this era of Marvel that had a very specific category. Like yeah, you get, because it's this whole section of just these old monster movies, these tropes of, the werewolf, the mummy, Frankenstein, like all these old monsters that through these old stories kind of got brought into Marvel. But like you didn't read these stories as a Marvel fan, you read them as a horror icon fan. And so when you're bringing these in with, oh, they're going against Dracula or they're going against this, and so I think these characters have a niche audience, and I think they can like make appearances further down the line. But I think this is something Marvel can use of like, hey, this is the perfect opportunity, this is the perfect cast or these characters to use for these special presentations. Because like I don't know if you're gonna have enough to actually make a ton of mainstream movies or shows, but like this, we just got introduced. Yeah, Elsa Bloodstone is someone who could definitely, I think, make further appearances. But like Man-Thing, Jack Russell, like I don't think you're gonna have a ton of ongoing things. But like now you give a further show with Elsa Bloodstone, and then all of a sudden be like, hey, we need backup from someone. And then Elsa Bloodstone goes, hey, I know a couple people. And then all of a sudden you get an appearance by, Man-Thing and Jack Russell again. Well, then all of a sudden you're just like, oh, this is fantastic, because those two had a lot of chemistry. Like, I don't know if there's enough to base that on there, because like with monsters and the monster hunting, that's such a flavor of the week type show setup as well.
Right.
So it's just like there's it's its own sub genre to it all, but like there's a lot that they can do there. But it's not. I don't think it's ever going to necessarily hit the mainstream.
Right. Mark, do you think this has a future in the MCU, or is this a dead end?
Yeah, man, I don't know. This is something like to me,
Spark
like as a
dead.
Marvel, comic fan, just
I
in
don't know.
general.
Mark?
My dad.
Hello? Do you hear me?
Am I frozen?
Did we lose?
I
Mark?
can hear you.
frozen.
Can you hear me? Am I frozen?
Uh-oh.
I can't hear you.
I don't know what's going on.
I don't know what's going on either. I'm so
Can you hear
confused.
me?
Uh-oh.
I'll just take.
Yeah,
We
I
can
can
hear
hear
you.
you. You're just, I think
You can
you're
hear me,
super
but what?
delayed. I don't know. That was weird.
Am I still super delayed?
Yeah, you're moving now. I mean,
Okay, no,
you're-
now you must be caught up now, but you like didn't start talking until like like a minute after I stopped.
Oof.
That was weird.
Wow, really?
Okay. Well, Mark, do you think that Werewolf by Night, this niche genre, has a future in the MCU, or is this a dead end?
I would say that would depend on what you kind of want from the characters. Like, are they going to be involved in Blade somehow, or are we creating like a monster universe in MCU? Which then leads to question: are we getting too many characters in the MCU, and will that be too confusing for some people to kind of like pinpoint where everyone's going to be?
Yeah.
So like,
I definitely think
I want
that
more
just
of that, but
right. I think just pulling them fully into the mainstream MCU definitely would get a lot of negative feedback for sure.
like,
But I think, I mean, honestly,
Werewolf
like I said,
fight King?
I'd rather see these shorter special presentations than I don't know. I guess he'll like join in with the rest of the Avengers to fight Kang in Secret Wars. Hey, Man Thing might have something to say about that. I mean, like, Kang coming for the nexus of all realities at some
Right?
point. So, maybe he get involved. Who knows? Well, guys, it has been an episode filled with lots of good stuff, lots of great things to talk about. So, any last comments on Werewolf by Night or on She-Hulk episode 8 before we close out the episode?
I got nothing.
All right. good. And Mark's being attacked by ghosts in his home.
Yep,
So
being attacked by ghosts. I'm delayed.
so
by,
if you
I feel
guys-
like it's 25 seconds.
it's kind of a long way. So if you, the Infinity Bros universe, have any comments about Werewolf by Night, tell us what you think about it in the Discord on Infinity Bros universe, or you can talk to us about it on social media. Tell us your thoughts or email infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. It has been a blast. Wherever you're listening, however you're listening, thank you so much for making us a part of your day. We love you, 2000. Have an awesome night. Bye.
Bye.